Greetings. It's been a while. Almost too long. What do you say? Yeah, a little too long. So, today's story is actually about two people. Ciri, under the alias of Falka when she was with the rats, and Falka herself, the legendary rebellion she took across the Redania and 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 nation. So, in my rats video, we know that Ciri had a pyromantic vision about Falka, and that's why she chose that name. But, did you ever wonder who she was and why Ciri had that magical vision? We'll find out today. So, with any great story, we start at the beginning. Did you read the books by now? You had lots of time. I hope so. This is pretty big spoilers, so... okay. So, Falka was the oldest daughter of 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯, king of Redania, and his first wife, Beatrix of Angevere. 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 was nicknamed the Elf because of his exceptional beauty and admiration he had for the 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯. His wife, Beatrix, was a half-elf noblewoman. She showed more human traits than her elven heritage. There's actually a miniature of her, and if accurate, depicted her quite ugly. Unlike her mother, though, Falka was said to have more elven, suggesting she was rather beautiful. It was no surprise that when 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 met the beautiful Ciri, he quickly divorced Beatrix and sent her and their 1-year-old daughter Falka back to Angevere. 𝓘𝓬𝓬𝓪𝓯 and his new wife had 2 sons, 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓮 and 𝓘𝓷𝓼𝓽𝓪𝓰. They also adopted the orphan 𝓜𝓮𝓻, Lord Doran's daughter, into the royal family. One rumor circulating around is that the Laura would curse the queen if she didn't take 𝓜𝓮𝓻 to her while she was dying, to keep her safe. Interesting rumor. So, practically forgotten, Falka was determined to take back what she believed rightfully belonged to her, as she was the eldest child. 25 years later, she instigated her rebellion and got her revenge. Falka's rebellion was a major uprising across the kingdoms of Redania and 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯. Her cause was supported by some members of the 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓮 and Angevere nobility, but it soon changed into a peasant war, larger and bloodier than the northern kingdoms had ever witnessed, with both sides committing gruesome atrocities. The rebellion reached its largest size when Falka killed her father, his second wife, and her 2 half-brothers with his bare hands. Due to this, she passed into legend as a bloodthirsty demon, though it's more likely she lost control of the blood-drenched mob and slogans displayed on their standards, fighting under the words like "death to kings" or "death to priests, nobility, gentry, and anybody well-to-do," and later, "death to sorcerers." These forces were responsible for burning down the entire Mirth, an ancient city of mages in Angevere, and skinning alive Master Redmir of 𝓘𝓷𝓼𝓽𝓪𝓰. After crossing the Pontar River and declaring war on 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯, they made their headquarters at Castle 𝓬𝓮𝓬𝓪, where they imprisoned the then-pregnant Princess 𝓜𝓮𝓻. While in prison, 𝓜𝓮𝓻 gave birth to a set of twins, and then went crazy. Around the same time, Falka also gave birth and left her newborn in the hands of the deranged prisoner, 𝓜𝓮𝓻. These 3 babies will be later named the 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 triplets, Adela, Fiona, and Amabet. 𝓜𝓮𝓻's husband, Gordeev, became enraged when he heard about the imprisonment of his wife. He was in charge of the 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 army and, with a bit of luck, defeated the rebellious armies in several battles, even at 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓪. After this defeat, the Redania throne was taken over by 𝓘𝓮𝓬's uncle, Vizimir I. Soon after the rebellion was over, Falka the Bloody was tried and condemned to death by burning at the stake. This clipping is from The History of the World by Roderick de Novembre.
When the criminal stake had been lit and the flames reached her, she began insulting all the knights, baron, mages, and counselors gathered in the square in such foul language that they were all filled with dread. Though wet logs had been stacked to prevent the hag from burning too quickly and provide her a chance to suffer in the flames, dry wood was soon added to the fire to end the execution more swiftly. She must truly have harbored a demon inside her, as she uttered not a single scream, though she sizzled fair enough. Instead, she began cursing horribly.
"An avenger shall be born from my blood,"
she cried.
"From the defiled elder blood, a destroyer of nations and worlds will rise. He shall avenge my torment. Death, death and revenge upon you and your offspring."
That was all she managed to articulate before she perished. Such was the death of Falka, her punishment for the innocent blood she had spilled.
But what became of her child? Which one of the 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓯 triplets was hers? After the rebellion ended, King Gordeev hired several mages to determine which child were his. The mages succeeded and found out that it was Adela, but they told the king that they weren't able to determine which one was Falka's to avoid a scandal and the execution of a 2-year-old. He was talking about, the terrible stuff. It's big brain time. So, now, earlier in the books, Jacob Finn found information that would suggest that Fiona was actually Falka's daughter. And I'm not ruling out that the sorcerers are wrong and they're magic, but maybe they only tested one baby and not all 3. Okay, if you really think about it, maybe Falka had 2 girls. What if both Adela and Fiona are hers and not Rhiannon's? I only say this because after Rhiannon gave birth, she went crazy. Even when they brought the triplets to her bedchambers to ask which are hers, she couldn't answer. No one in the prison could say which is hers or Falka's. If, let's say, Adela was Falka's daughter, then why did Ciri have her vision about Falka? Adela died at the age of 17 with no children. The only idea would be that it was Falka's curse that she inflicted on the elder blood before her death that would make Ciri hallucinate. So, if you follow along this family tree, you'll see that the elder blood started with Lara Dorren and her parents, and then flows all the way down to 𝓘𝓵𝓼𝓼𝓽𝓪𝓰𝓻𝓪𝓿. From Falka's last curse, she said, "An avenger shall be born from my own blood, from the defiled elder blood." But that doesn't necessarily mean 𝓘𝓵𝓼𝓼, since she later says, "He shall avenge my torment." He. That would mean that Ciri's son would be the prophet Falka foretold. But since there's only been daughters on the elder blood family tree, the pyromantic vision came to her, the newest recruit to the elder blood line. Now let's talk about Ciri when she had her vision. Ciri was in the desert with 𝓘𝓏𝓏. He had just been injured by a venomous sand monster. He was slowly dying. She had to act. Yennefer had taught her to harness energy from her surroundings, but there wasn't any water, only sand. She was desperate to save 𝓘𝓏𝓏, so she did what Yennefer told her not to do: draw power from fire. She healed 𝓘𝓏𝓏 with ease, but she couldn't control the power, and the flames started to speak to her. This is when she saw Falka for the first time. Her vengefulness towards Geralt, Yennefer, and everyone grew into pure hatred. She felt abandoned, betrayed, and this was Falka's chance to plant the seeds of her curse onto Ciri, to avenge her wrongful death upon the world.
You are mighty. Those that harmed you do not know what they had challenged. Avenge yourself. Make them pay. Make them all pay. Let them tremble with fear at your feet, teeth chattering, not daring to look you in the face. Let them beg for mercy, but do not grant it to them. Make them pay. Make them all pay. Revenge!
Ciri had a vision of a black-haired woman that was surrounded by fire and smoke. In the smoke were rows of gallows, sharpened stakes, scaffolds, and mountains of corpses. They were the corpses of Nilfgaardians, of those who had plundered Cintra. A black knight was swinging on a gibbet, crows pecking at his eyes through his winged helmet. Other gibbets held 𝓑𝓭, the one she saw on 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 and on the Isle of 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯. She saw Vilgefortz on a stake, and the point of the stake protruding from his collarbone. Ciri saw many others chained to stakes. The nearest were Triss, Margarita, Mother Ninika, Jara, Fabio. Ciri screamed, "No! No! No! No!"
Yes! Screamed the black-haired woman. Death to them all! Take your revenge on all of them! Despise them! Death to the entire world! Death, destruction, and blood! They betrayed you! They tricked you! They harmed you! Now you have the power! Take revenge!
Yennefer's mouth was cut and torn, pouring blood. Her hands and feet were shackled to the dirty walls of a dungeon by heavy chains. The mob around the scaffold screamed. The poet Dandelion laid his neck on the block. The blade of the executioner's axe flashed above him.
They betrayed you! They deceived and tricked you! To them, you were a pawn, just a puppet on a stick. They used you, they condemned you to hunger, the burning sun, the thirst, to misery, and to loneliness. You are mighty. Let the whole world cower before thee. Let the whole world cower before the elder blood.
Now the Witchers were being led onto the scaffold. Vesemir, Eskel, Cohen, Lambert, Geralt. "No!" Ciri shrieked.
Let it burn, Falka! Let it all burn!
"Go away! Be gone! I don't want you! I don't want your power!"
You do. You desire this. Desire and lust seethe in you like a flame. The pleasure is enslaving you. It is might. It is force. It is power. The most delicious of the world's pleasures.
It was too much for her. She rejected Falka's hatred and relinquished the power. So, we now know about Ciri's pyromantic vision. Now, let's talk about her being Falka with the rats. After the rats saved Kaylee and Ciri from the trappers, they were trying to decide what to do with Ciri. She couldn't take the belittling any longer and blurted out that she didn't need them and that she was leaving. Well, this was astonishing to the rats, since they thought she was a simpleton or even a mute. It even perked Iskra's interest, and she said,
Look at her. She's like a raptor, a young falcon.
They realized that Ciri was all alone, and so they invited her to join their family. Each member gave one precious gift to her. Gazela gave a belt set with silver. Missile placed a green satin tunic on her and handed her an embroidered blouse. Kaylee gave her a small stiletto in a sheath, sparkling with precious stones. Assay bestowed an ornamental pendant. Wreath handed her a pair of soft leather gloves. And finally, Iskra placed a beret with a pheasant feather on her head.
What shall we call you, young falcon?
Iskra asked. 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯, Ciri replied, which in Elder speech means falcon or Falka, so Iskra went with Falka. Now, Ciri was under the new name, Falka. she became a much more interesting person during her time with the rats. She had a group of friends that felt like family. She got to be wild and free, no restraints. No one was bossing her around. And she also developed some new magic. Lesbomancy. As you recall in my rats video, they weren't the best company to be a part of. Even though they were fairly nice to the locals, they were still bandits and misfits. Ciri was already holding a grudge towards Geralt, Yennefer, Triss, or anyone who had abandoned her. And with that hatred, she would take it out on anyone she could. Right before she joined the rats, Ciri made her first kill, a village spearman. This was only the start. Even though Geralt warned her not to kill out of pleasure, she was with the wrong crowd and began to like it. She seemed like a completely different person than the Ciri we grew to know about, from Cintra to her training at 𝓘𝓚𝓬𝓪𝓯 and her time at the Temple of Melitele. Dare I say, she seemed to act like Falka herself? On one account, when the rats made a visit to a village, one peasant stood out from the rest. Jooleya tossed a large sack of coins into the dirt, and many of the villagers scrambled on the ground to pick up the coins. This peasant resisted the urge to dig in the sand and chicken dung. His pride wouldn't allow it. Instead, he scowled at the rats for their haughty behavior. Falka noticed, charged towards him on her horse, squaring him up with her cold, green eyes, filled with evil and hatred. But not every visit into town was terrible. After their recent venture from the mountains, they went to a local tavern for a good time. Beer, food, music. Iskra clapped her hands and jumped onto the oak table. The flutes and fiddles picked up the melody as she began to dance.
Falka!
She shouted.
You're quick with the sword. What about dancing? Can you follow the steps?
Ciri jumped onto the table next to the elf. The villagers cheered, the drums boomed, the bagpipes whined. Both danced, touching elbows, with their hands supported on hips. The plates and tables shook with the rhythm of their heels. It was not dancing. It was an obsession.
Dance, Falka. Forget about everything.
The fiddle and the flute played a sharp closing note. Iskra and Ciri ended their dance by stomping their heels, their elbows continuing to touch. Breathless and shaky, they dashed to each other, to embrace, each covered in sweat, heat, and happiness. The barn exploded with a loud cry and the applause of dozens of hands.
Falka, you devil!
Iskra gasped for breath.
When we get tired of robbery, we can head into the world to make money as dancers.
Ciri could only laugh breathlessly as tears ran down her face in happiness. One day, as they went to Laredo to sell some stolen horses, Missile and Ciri found some delicious treats. Oh, I like this. Candy floss. Okay. Now, while they were in town, a thief thought his disgusting jokes would be humorous to Falka. He was wrong. Dead wrong. Before he had time to react, he was already on the ground in the pool of his own blood. Jooleya had to step in before Ciri could kill the other thief. Oh, my candy floss. I'll buy you another. At this point in the book, it's noted that she tells Missile that she's only with the rats so that she's not alone. That her and Missile are nothing but a game, and that she no longer enjoys their game. She would leave, but she doesn't want to be alone. Ciri also goes on to say that her supposed family should have found her by now if they truly loved her. I'm a little disappointed in you, Ciri. Very rude. After that night, they ambushed the Baron of Cassiday's carriage, in which his daughter was riding. Falka took the girl's brooch, thus traumatizing her. This caused the Baron to hire 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 to hunt down the rats and to bring Falka back alive, so the Baron could flay her alive. Meanwhile, the rats had taken over a small postal station and were getting some fresh ink. 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 found them and said that 𝓑𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 is after them and is close by, in the town of Jealousy, not 30 miles from there. He also mentioned to the rats about the false Ciri in Nilfgaard. Well, this got Falka's attention, since she was the original Ciri. She felt that she was entitled to that throne and decided it was time to leave the rats and to claim her birthright. That night, she slipped out of bed and was headed toward the stables when Missel found her. She told her that she wasn't fleeing, but catching something. So that's why you were kind to me today, for the first time after so many days. One last time before parting, and then forgotten? Said Missel. I'll never forget you, Missel. You will. Never. I promise you. I'll find you, I'll come in a 6-horse gilded coach. You'll see. Soon I will have possibilities. I'll make sure that your fate changes. You'll see. They kissed one final time before Ciri rode off. She wanted to find 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 and ask him directions to 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓪 so that she would claim the throne for herself. Once she found 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯, she couldn't keep her eyes off his black mare. It was beautiful, slender, and pranced gracefully. She made no mention to 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓪, but he knew she was infatuated by his mare. That sounded really dirty. She asked 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓪 directions to 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓪, but it was quite complicated from where they were, so he suggested he escort her to 𝓘𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓰. So, along the way, they were ambushed by bandits. 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓪 got shot in the back with a bolt and fell off his horse. Ciri lunged forward and helped him into some bushes. As both the horses ran off, it was the perfect distraction for them to lay low until the bandits left. It's at this time that 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 got the hot idea to wrestle with Ciri. Well, of course, Ciri was against it. But she was also genuinely curious and was earlier aroused at seeing the black mare. And she was still technically a virgin, so she let herself go and was on the verge of forgetting the whole world when 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 stopped. He was laying on top of her, and she felt something running down her chest inside. It was his blood. She pushed off the dead 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯. Before he died, though, he mentioned he had a magical bracelet that could call the black mare to him. She tried the bracelet, and it actually worked. His black mare returned. She recalled a custom on the 𝓗𝓭𝓏 Islands that says, a girl's first lover gives her an expensive gift. Well, she took the not official wrestling as an acceptable gesture and took the gift. You're as black and smart as a kelpie from the sea. You're as magical like a kelpie, so you shall be called Kelpie. She mounted Kelpie and rode on to Jealousy. 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯 told Gazela about the bounty hunter and knew they would take the bait. What they didn't know was the ambush awaiting them. She had to ride 20 miles to try and warn them before it was too late. But if you read the books, you know that it was too late. When Ciri arrived in Jealousy, all the rats were dead except for Missel. She had just arrived to see Missel crawling on her knees to 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓪𝓯, her stomach ripped open, bleeding everywhere. When Ciri screamed, 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓯 responded with a powerful sweeping blow, throwing Missel against the wall like a red-smeared rag. Ciri flew into a rage and attacked 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓯 with her sword. They parried and dodged after one another. This intrigued 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓯. He never faced such an opponent before, much less someone so young, nimble, and to still be standing. 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓯 chose not to kill Ciri, but instead stunned her. While she was down, 𝓡𝓮𝓬𝓯 kicked the sword from her hands and dragged her by her hairs to where Missel lay. She was still alive, but slowly, painfully, dying. She could see Missel's eyes were dull and glassy like a fish, her hands opening and closing. Bonnart let go of Ciri's hair. She slumped down to her hands and feet, shaking with sobs. She watched Missel's life fade before her eyes, until she stopped moving completely. Bonnart tied Ciri to a hitching post and told some servants to hold her head up and to keep her eyelids open. They forced her to watch as he cut off their heads one by one. Jooleya, Kaylee, Asay, Reef, Iskra, and Missel. That concludes the tale of Falka the Bloody and Ciri the Rat. Tune in next time as we join the torturous adventure of Leo Bonner and Ciri. And with that said, good luck on the path. But he knew she was... Ciri could only laugh breathlessly. I messed up all of that. Fighting under the words like, death to knights. Death to knights. Is death to kings. Knights. So, practically forgotten. I scratched my nose, didn't I? I did this as well. Okay, take 3. And skinning alive Master Radmir of 𝓘𝓷𝓼𝓽𝓪𝓰. This was astonishing to the rats, since they... While they were in town, a thief thought he's... Do not know what... Oh, jeez. It's gonna be tough doing this reading. Ooh, okay, I gotta do that over again. Even, acting's hard on the elder blood family tree. It's Big Bang. Big Bang. Big Bang. What's that even mean? Jara. Fari. Fabio. Whew, that was good. I'm worn out.